Wow. So this has been in the back of my mind for a long, 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 long time. Really, what's going on in the world, the separation of peoples, and I guess what revealed to me or what came clear to me is if I was to include myself in a constituency, I am born into a constituency that colonized the world, that went out and however you want to describe it. Doesn't really matter what crimes were committed. Maybe none were. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that none were committed in the settling of the Americas or whatever, or Australia, or you know the rest of the world, Southern Africa. Let's just say that. My thing would be this: is that I find myself sincerely identifying much more with the colonized, who then respond to what the colonizer seems totally insensitive to. And I believe that that insensitivity is rooted in the colonizer's belief in their inherent superiority, so that when the Europeans came over here, they said, well, of course, the Indians, the native people, all want to be like us. And those who didn't want to be like us and those who reacted against being forced to be like us, Christians and wearing funny clothes and the odd things that we do, who didn't want to be like that, who wanted to maintain a nomadic lifestyle regarding the Plains Indians, that was just not on. That was not going to happen. So, long story short, we kill their food supply. We insist. Even the sympathetic among us said, "You have to genuflect. You have to bow to us. Go on reservations. Behave. We will give you food, etc., etc." And then there would be a cohort amongst the colonized who would say, fuck you. I'm off into the woods. I'm going to sharpen my arrows and I'm going to shoot you. And then we, the colonized, will respond to that as terrorism, when it is terrorism, which it sometimes is, and even when it isn't, as per the fast diminishing reality of what happened on October the 7th. So there have been many kinds of war. It seems there are three today. The type some of us remember nostalgically, when there, quote, was no doubt who was on the right side, end quote, the two sides, with allies with a certain equality of munitions, the world wars. Well, lots of those, when Napoleon fought the Russians, there was an equality. When he fought the English, both sides had, the 100 Years' War. There were times when one side was greatly outnumbered, but you weren't having two different civilizations, one with guns and one with flint knives, for instance. The colonial wars were usually type number two, one side with a massive advantage in technology, training, readiness, and intent. Then the third form, the other side of number two, waged by the disadvantaged against the superior force. It is a bummer truth for the superior armies that they often lose. They lost at Marathon and Salamis, poor old Persia, then outnumbering Alexander 1, 2, and 3, the Brits in the Americas, the US in Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, the Soviets in Afghanistan. The Europeans won a war of attrition in the Americas, diseased blankets, guns, and destroying food supplies, etc., all snuffed out language, religion, and culture about which they seem oblivious, probably because somehow they assumed their language, religion, and culture were the only one that everybody else had to learn. Jesus is ever, blah, blah, blah. Nasty stuff euphemistically called settling by those who profit by it, going over old ground. Over the centuries, number 3 has been brave, hopeless, doomed, and then often labeled by the victors of number 2 practitioners as terrorism. I'm not going over any old ground. I make no difference between the wars conducted by the US, Europe, Russia, China, and Japan and terrorism. It is all war or all terrorism. There were native Britons who grovelled to the Romans. There were those who didn't. Sitting Bull was shot by Bullhawk and Red Tomahawk. Crazy Horse was stabbed by a white boy, urged to it by other Indians. It seems the colonials like the grovellers best. They'd be the law-abiding. I cannot honestly say what I would do were I to be occupied of the oppressed community. It has never happened to me. I am an Armenian, but I have no victim envy. And the Turks took away our guns then. As I have walked in the world, I am top of the food chain. Look at me. Or should I say, the murder chain. I am open to hear of the colonial power who brought peace, citizenship, and freedom to the colonized. I'll wait. It is difficult for me to sympathize with the colonials who brought this nothing to the originals, then complained they left the reservations, disappeared into the forest, and waged war on them, terrorized them. I think colonials have a sort of terror gene. They see it everywhere before it happens. Then it does, until the end, at their particular wounded knee. The universal Western chorus since October the 7th has been but the atrocity, meaning that we would be virtuous if we stopped the genocide. That's not going to happen. You will not be considered virtuous. It will be thought that you got the response that you deserved. This response is tellingly not shared by the Irish. It is universal among the laughably obvious: Canada, Australia, Northern Europe, America, Germany, South Africa. No, not South Africa. In my opinion, that constituency is sick. It's diseased. The colonials. And it's time for a cure. High time.